Okay, welcome back to our channel, that is Ajay Kumar Yadav, and we are going to talk about the today's session with a very different concept today. As you know very well, we can see in the screen that it is a different types of graphs. So we have a different types of graph as per the motion we know very well. So very first thing we would like to start with the different types of graph. Let me draw this graph so that you can understand better. So this is the today's graph we are going to discuss is distance time graph. In the distance time graph we are going to draw a straight line. We are going to draw a straight line, and here we are going to represent this is my A, this is my B. So from this distance time graph we can understand that we are going to calculate the slope. Very first line we are going to calculate the slope of an graph. Very second point we are going to find out that this is the slope of an graph. So very second point we can say that it is in a straight line. The motion of the body, motion is in straight line. Straight line. So what do you infer from this? It is a straight line. It is parallel to x-axis. It is parallel to the x-axis. So motion is a straight line. So definitely the slope is, since the motion of the body is in straight line, so we can say that the slope of the body is 0. Obviously the slope is 0. So with this we can also say that speed of the body is also 0. Speed is also 0. So there are 4 different points we need to represent with respect to the different types of graph. The very second graph we are going to draw here is going to discuss with the same distance time graph. In this distance time graph we are going to consider 2 different points. So it is in straight line. The motion is said to be uniform. First we are going to calculate the slope. The slope is in uniform motion. The slope is in uniform motion. If it is a uniform motion, obviously you can understand that if the slope is uniform motion and it is inclined to an time axis, it is inclined to time axis. Point number 2, it is inclined little bit to the time axis. Since the motion is uniform, we can also say that the distance traveled by the graph at a time t is equals to 0. Distance traveled by the graph at the time t is equals to 0, and motion is an uniform motion. From this what we can calculate, sir? From this graph we can calculate the slope of a graph. With this we can say slope of a graph is uniform motion. So speed is also uniform only. Obviously speed is uniform. Obviously we can say speed is uniform. Okay, so speed is uniform. Next, the very next graph we are going to draw. As you can see that here the graph is in increasing state of motion. The y-axis will be obviously distance and x-axis will be obviously time. So they are considering the distance time graph. Since the motion is constantly accelerated motion, point number 1, the motion is accelerated motion. You have to write this first point as it is accelerated motion, point number 1. And the second point we can represent here as the slope of the graph is increasing. Slope of the graph is increasing. Slope of the graph is increasing with the time. Slope of the graph is increasing with the time. So obviously we can say that slope of the graph is increasing with the time. So we can represent that motion is accelerated motion. Motion is said to be as an accelerated motion. Now you yourself can define this graph by seeing this diagram. Since y-axis is a distance component, x-axis is a time component, and now the graph is going to be like this. So this is my A point and this is my B point. I can represent here. So with this I can say that motion is an decelerated motion. Decelerated motion. Motion is said to be as the decelerated motion, and the slope of the graph is decreasing with time. Slope of the graph, you can say that slope of the graph is decreasing with the time. Slope of the graph is decreasing with the time. Okay, so I hope you will be clear with the four graphs. One is the constant motion, second is uniform motion, third is an increasing with the time, fourth one is the decreasing with the time. And the next graph, which is not going to be much more important, but you can understand for reference. The next graph which are going to draw here, this is the next graph I am going to draw here, and this graph is very insensitive, which is not needed at all, but you can understand for your reference, since we know that this is my time component and this is my distance component. So this graph is, you can consider even this is my A and this is my B. Since the graph is parallel to y-axis, we can say that graph is parallel to distance component. So what can we understand from the distance component? So graph is parallel to distance component means it represents the infinite speed. It represents the infinite speed. The speed is said to be infinite. Infinite speed. Point number 3. Point number 2 is an infinite speed, which is not possible at all. Infinite speed is never possible. So any graph, if you take infinite speed, acceleration, graph which is parallel to y component is not possible. So infinite speed is not possible. Sir, what does it mean if the speed is parallel to y-axis? Time remains 0 and body is still moving. How come it is possible that time remains 0 and body is moving, which is not? That is why we are writing in the graph as infinite speed. And the next component we are going to write is the nothing but, this is the graph we are going to represent here. This is my time component and this is my distance component. This is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. Okay, so in this graph it is also not possible. Point number 1, it is also not possible. So why it is not possible? Distance traveled by the body cannot decreases with the time. Distance traveled is increases. Distance traveled increases with the decrease in time. With the decrease in time, which is not going to possible at all. If a body is increasing, so how the time will decrease? That is not going to be possible. If I am driving a bike or if I am driving a car, if the body's motion is increasing means obviously time is increasing. How come if I am driving a car or if I am driving a bike, how come the time will decrease? That is also not a possible case. So with this you can understand that when the distance traveled by the body is increases, in the distance traveled, so time in the decreases will not going to possible. That is why it is also not possible. In the sense you can say this graph is not possible. In the sense you can understand that this is also not possible. And the very least graph which I am going to discuss now, last and the least graph which I am going to distance with respect to the distance and time graph, that is nothing but this is the structure of the graph. So what can you understand the graph? If I want to define the position of the graph, first condition, same object, here I can say this is my A or this is B. So same object cannot exist at same instant of time. Same object cannot exist at two position at a same instant of time. So I mean to say here is, so time in a particular instant of time, suppose I will consider this is my 3 second. So the third second, object cannot position at the two different positions. Time is 3 seconds only. Either the object can be at A position, object can be at B position. Both the positions is cannot be possible. So the object cannot exist two positions at the same instant of time. Condition number 2. Condition number 2, that we can say that this is also not possible. This graph is also said to be as not possible. This graph is also not possible. Am I right? So there are different types of graphs we have discussed now. First condition is the parallel to the time. The graph is drawn between distance and time, which is parallel to the time. This is also distance time graph, which is increasing uniform speed. The slope of the graph is uniform speed. It is increasing with the time, same distance time graph. This is also distance time graph, which is decreasing with the time. And these three graphs, which is going to help you to find out which is not possible. These are all the cases of the graph which make you to understand which is not possible. Why it is not possible? Parallel to y-axis. Why this is not possible? Distance is increasing, time is decreasing. That's why this graph is also not possible. In this position, object cannot be at the same instant of time with two different positions. That is why this graph is also not possible. Since we know that these four graphs can be possible from the distance time relation graph, but these three graphs are not possible. So don't forget to like, subscribe and the comment on the channel. Keep watching, keep updating. Thank you.